I cannot wait for the day where my daughter and son say like, oh, 45 minutes to Tokyo, that's so fucking slow. I can't wait. Hello, this is Dalton Post Michael, and today we're going to talk about why are we optimistic about the future. So to be clear, at YC, we fund a lot of startups, and even though we try to do a very good job, most startups fail.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, we know a lot more about failing and failed startups than successful ones.
By an order of magnitude.
Yeah, that's just how the numbers work, right?
So
we see failed startups every day. We live it, we breathe it. This is the job that we have.
Yes.
Is we're experts on failure.
Well, and just so you don't think, oh, well, they're going to be optimistic because they're like rolling in the dough. The ones that work take like 12 years to work, right? So it's like, even for the ones that do well, like you don't make money fast being an early stage startup investor. So why is a situation where it takes a long time to make money and a lot of startups are dying all around us every day? Why are we optimistic?
I think it's this. I think if you zoom all the way out, it's weird to talk to young people and have them be pessimistic about the future.
Yes.
It's weird.
It is weird.
And so part of the reason, we want to do this video is to give you some reasons to be optimistic yourself.
Yes.
And I think it comes down to perspective, Michael.
Yes.
I think it's all about perspective, where if all you do is read the news every day, you get bombarded with negativity, especially around technology.
Yes.
There's a lot of, the biggest technology stories right now are
negative.
some version of like, this is bad, these people are bad, like
people are being exploited.
Bad, right? And so
yes.
it's not hard if you're just consuming the news and not zooming out to be like, things were better back 50 years ago or 100 years ago.
Don't point to me, I wasn't around 50.
And I'm not sure that's true. I think there's a perspective thing. So again, so walk with us here. Let's talk about perspective.
Yes.
Let's talk about the things that have improved since the 90s when we were like teenagers.
Yes.
Let's go through the list. We thought through
the list.
Go ahead.
Right. So the 90s were supposed to be boom time America. And if we think about what's better now than the 90s, I think I would start with like availability of information. I remember in the mid 90s getting this CD-ROM called Encarta.
Yep.
And I remember my uncle, who's 20 years older than me, being like, oh my God, the encyclopedia's in your house versus having to go to the fucking library. This is incredible.
And you could just search it. It was on one disc.
Exactly.
It was easy to search.
And like that, now, God knows how much more information than that is like for free on the internet.
Literally everything that's textual information is a search away.
Yes, and video.
Freaking YouTube itself.
Crazy.
There's a website where anyone can record any video of like
All
any
things.
length
Yes.
on any topic for free.
Yes.
And you can watch it for free forever. That is like mind-blowing to me.
Yes.
How incredible this is. Again, if you zoom out, if you think like you're an alien and you just have no context on this stuff,
Yes.
this is incredible.
Incredible.
And none of this existed.
Well, and this isn't, like, we're not talking about 50 years ago, right? We're talking
wasn't
about
that
like
long ago.
20, 25 years ago.
Yep.
This didn't exist, right? All right, next, communications. I don't know about you, but we started with one phone line in the house.
Yep.
And that's it. That was communication.
Again, people are like, well, but must have been so great. There were no phones and like it was so much easier to be a teenager and all that. I mean,
No.
maybe.
No.
Maybe.
No, it wasn't great. Like, you couldn't be like on the internet and on the phone at the same time. I don't know if anyone's ever taken that for granted. So now when people I open up the messaging app folder on my phone and there's like 17 apps with video, audio, text. I can text people all over the world for free. I can call people anywhere in the world for free.
It's better. It's like a lot better.
It used to cost money. We were living in New Jersey. It used to cost money to call New York.
Yeah,
It's
man.
like right next door.
You got to talk fast when you call it.
That was long distance. So communications, a little better.
Transportation, freaking Uber, ride sharing, travel.
Crazy.
Maps. Do you remember printing out MapQuest?
Dude, do you remember just having to buy maps?
physical maps to drive around a city.
And your dad would have a bunch of maps in the car for all the places you might want to drive to in the future. So transportation's gotten a little better.
Yeah.
A little better. What else has gotten better?
Healthcare. I mean, people are living longer, they're living better lives.
Yes.
Standard of care, infant mortality.
Yes.
Life expectancy around the world.
Yes.
People making more money, being raised out of the poverty line. I mean, just look at all the stats. You can look it up, viewer.
Yes.
Actually, like zoom all the way out and look at this stuff for yourself.
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
The number of people living in extreme poverty is less. The number of kids living longer. Once again, we're not talking about the difference between like the Civil War era and today.
This was like 20, 30 years ago.
This isn't even our whole lifetime.
Yep.
We're talking half of our lifetime. All right, what else? So we got entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, think about, there's like an infinite supply of things to look at all day.
Infinite.
Any movie you want to see, any television show ever created, any book ever created. Yes. If you want to pirate things, like if we include piracy in here,
it's literally everything for free.
The sum of all human creative content in the history of time is available at your fingertips for free.
Yes.
And the only thing limiting it is your willingness to go find it.
Yes.
Like it's your appetite is the limiting factor, not
you might have
scarcity.
to watch some ads.
Yeah.
You might have to watch.
But it's post scarcity on this stuff. The only limiting is your imagination of what you want to watch.
Exactly.
You know?
It's all there.
Okay, so we sound like boomers here, but the reason to enumerate this stuff is that in the moment when all this stuff was happening, it wasn't immediately obvious that the world was changing.
Nope.
It was just kind of normal, like, oh, this new thing came out. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And even at the time, some of this stuff was, people were against it, or they're like, this doesn't seem so great.
No.
But when you gain perspective of looking back 20, 30 years later, it's way more obviously earth-shatteringly awesome.
Yes.
And so...
Well, and I think what's cool is that wasn't a particularly special period of time. I think they're on the cusp of a bunch of new, interesting stuff, right? Yep. Hilariously, like I remember when Starlink was like an idea.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a funny idea.
An internet access anywhere going to the satellites?
And it was like, theoretically it's possible, but I just remember it being like, well, first Elon has to figure out how to make his rockets not explode. But once he does that, he's just going to launch satellites around the Earth. I remember that being like, oh, sure. And then like, I remember the day Starlink launched and I was like, well, I guess the rockets work.
It works.
Yes. Like
you can use it.
You can use it. Cruise, perfect example. I remember getting into a cruise car with Kyle, driving down 101, and he said to me, uh-oh, there's a shadow in the road. Let's see how we handle this. And I'm like, oh, fuck. This is an MVP.
Shadows, eh? Yeah. Haven't thought about that.
Yeah, haven't thought about shadows in ever when driving. And I remember when Cruise did their kind of first open launch, and I got into a cruise car with my wife, and it just drove us to where we were going. Yeah. And I remember for the first minute 30 being like, I can't believe this is the same.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is on like a continuum that started with me being afraid of shadows, and now it's like.
Well, and again, I actually care about that stuff a lot. If I just think about, growing up, about just the number of people that I knew that died in car accidents.
Yeah.
And the number of people that every day get seriously injured or die in car accidents. I think we're going to look back and be like, that was crazy barbaric. That was like having surgeons that didn't wash their hands.
Literally.
In that era.
Yes.
Is I think how we'll look at some of this transportation stuff.
Yes.
Right? And we're right on the precipice.
It's happening now.
It's not like everyone's even excited about self-driving cars. It's like, oh, I don't know about this whole self-driving car thing.
Yeah.
Drunk drivers aren't that bad, are they?
Yeah. It's only tens of thousands of people who die a year in America. It's like, whatever.
And so I would expect people to be like pretty excited about this.
Yeah.
But it's seen as sort of this like neutral or divisive issue instead of something that's kind of awesome.
It's happening. I mean, another one's renewable energy. I had a friend who was working on a startup, and he said something to me that I thought was a lie. He was like, oh yeah, based on like where you live in America, you can choose to just buy your energy from like a renewable source, like hydroelectric or solar. And I was just like, that doesn't exist. He's like, yeah, it's here. And I'm like, oh, well, it must be like 10x more expensive. He's like, no, like right now it's I think like 10% more expensive. And I was like, what? Like that's happening. Like we went from solar being the future in the 90s to
just being the commonplace reality that no one thinks too much about.
And it feeling economical for a lot of people. It's like, oh, you live in a sunny area.
Yeah.
You're going to save some money. It did not feel that way in the 90s.
Well, we're in a solar-powered building right now.
Yeah.
And this is solar power powering this lighting. There's solar panels on the roof.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. Do we care?
No. It's like, it's happening right now. So, and to me, the one that's like, we're probably a little bit more off the cusp on, but like when this happens, I'm going to be so pissed, right? Everyone talks about rockets and going to space. The whole like, when rockets are reliable, you can go anywhere in the world in 45 minutes. Like, we could commute to Tokyo.
Yep.
Like, when that happens, like, it changes the world in so many ways. And that was like, in the 90s, we were watching space shuttles go up. And like half of the shit in that space shuttle basically like getting ejected into the freaking ocean. And whenever you did the math, it was like, oh, that cost us more than building a rocket from scratch and blowing it up. Like that's where we were in the 90s. And now like we actually have a path to, I can go anywhere in 45 minutes. Like,
it's pretty cool. And again, what this makes me think of, I don't have this graph handy, so I hope I'm not misquoting. But I remember the graph being references of the cost per pound to put something in space. And it looks like Moore's Law, where what's happening is that there's this Moore's Law looking graph on how much cheaper it is getting to put something into orbit. And how, if you just believe in the Moore's Law continuing to happen here, the amount of cool stuff that will happen in space in 5, 10, 20 years is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, and we're at that moment where it's getting interesting.
Today.
Yeah, exactly.
It's getting really cool.
Yes. So I think what's so cool is like not only have things gotten so much better since the 90s, things are getting better. So if all of this stuff's great, why are people so pessimistic?
Well, I think it's hard to have perspective, man.
Yes.
I think when you're really caught up in the moment, everything gets polarized into political stuff or tribal warfare about who's on what team. And so if your team is the thing pushing for the thing, you celebrate it. But if the other team is,
screwing people.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's everything is polarized.
Yes. I also think there's this weird expectations game, right? Like, it's magical thinking to think that we get all the things we spent the first chunk of the video talking about, and there's nothing bad.
Yep.
That's magical. That's not being an adult.
There's going to be trade-offs.
There's going to be trade-offs, right? Like the trade-off on having, 60-second videos that are exactly what I want, that I can swipe anytime I want, is like, maybe 2 hours of swiping, I should be going to bed.
Yep.
Like there are a lot of different trade-offs. And like, I just feel like when people treat themselves like children versus treat themselves like adults, it's like, a child doesn't acknowledge the trade-offs exist, right? A child can think magically.
They want only the perfect. It has to all be good with no bad.
With no bad, yes.
Cut the crust off.
Exactly, cut the crust off, right? And for a while, adults kind of create that world, and then after a while, adults explain to the kids, like, I can't cut the crust off the world.
Or like, you need to cut your own crust off. I mean, if you want to do that, you can, but I'm not doing that anymore.
No, the world is crust. And like, technology is crusts, right? Technology, with the good comes some bad, right? So that's a big one. I also think that like there's this weird thing where the pacing is inconsistent, right? Like sometimes you get a lot of innovation in one part of the economy, and then sometimes you get a lot of innovation in another part of the economy. It's not reliable.
Yep.
And so,
and it's so easy. It's this debate thing where you can say, well, what about X problem? Like, no matter what good thing happens.
Yes.
And they're not wrong. What about X? Like, you're right. X is a problem. Like, that's totally fair.
Yes.
But if you want to tear down anything interesting that happens by saying, well, X over here isn't solved yet, it's easy to just get trapped in the mud.
You tear down everything.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll say this, right? In reflection, we both have young kids, and I am super excited that my kids get to grow up now. I cannot wait for the day where my daughter and son say like, oh, 45 minutes to Tokyo, that's so fucking slow. I can't wait. In my day.
This isn't so great. What's so great about that, Michael?
It's really rocky. It's a bumpy ride. I am so excited about the world that they're gonna join, and I'm confident they're going to get even more over the next, 80 years than we're getting, which is really fun.
And think about it. you all get to create this future.
Yes.
And there's this thing where it's cooler and edgier and more punk rock.
Yes.
To be like everything is bullshit. And that's a good high horse to be on if you want to be cool.
Yep.
But if you're actually building things and you want to be a part of creating it,
Yeah.
it's much easier and more fruitful to be optimistic and think about all the things you can do and think about what you personally can do and what you can work on.
Yes.
Versus just being like, burn it all down because of X.
Well, I was thinking about it. If you really care about those problems, you have to be optimistic to try to solve them. And like some of the people who are like the biggest social critics or the biggest revolutionaries or the biggest change agents in our society were default optimistic.
Yep. Because they believed it could work.
Exactly.
They believed their effort wasn't a waste of time.
No.
You have to believe enough
Yes.
to invest yourself into something.
Exactly. And so I'm willing to bet none of your heroes were the cool, snarky folks who never did anything and just bitched about how the world was like. None of your heroes were that. And so don't be one of those people. Like you can choose to not be one of those people. All right, great chat.
Great, thanks.